Hello everybody, this is Jasmina, and this is a kind of a renewed video about why I use True North. Now, many practitioners only care about compass direction. They use that either from a smartphone or if you're more traditional, you use the Lopan. But if you really understand how energy works and you really understand what you're going to get, at least from a Lopan for sure, you will see that this is going to really result in errors in measuring your facing direction, at least in actually most locations on Earth. And sometimes it's really bad. Sometimes it's only a little off. Now, everybody agrees that chi is energy, absolutely is energy. And the origins must come from our sun. At least the vast, vast majority, like 99.9%, comes from our sun. Now, all stars, we know this, they emit both electromagnetic radiation, that's photons, and solar wind. Now, electromagnetic radiation is all types of, all the whole spectrum. It's huge. It goes from the, really low infrared, like the background radiation that we have everywhere in the universe, up to gamma rays. In fact, gamma rays may not even be the highest. I don't know what's the highest. But it's all the whole spectrum. We only see with our eyes the visible light. But there's also UV, which gives us sunburns and also tans us, and also infrared, and that's basically heat. Now, solar wind is made up of high energy charged particles, usually electrons and protons that get stripped from the outer corona of a star where the nuclear reactions don't actually happen, but it's just usually hydrogen, that's there, and it gets broken apart because there's such high energy coming out. Now, the Earth's magnetic field deflects nearly all of the charged particles that make up the solar wind. It probably deflects well over 99%. And this is good. Now, Mars, we've had probes on Mars for some time, and we have, of course, a lot of data set from things that orbit Mars. It's very clear at one time Mars had liquid water because it's in the right temperate zone, that it gets enough sun that could be warm enough, and that it had an atmosphere that had oxygen, a fair amount of oxygen in it. So it's very likely at some point it had at least plant life or something that produced oxygen as a byproduct. And and we know this because all of the Mars surface now looks like rust. That's actually what you're seeing is the color of rust. It's the soil and every bit of iron has been oxidized, and that's why it's called the red planet. Now, it had a molten core at one point in time, and because Mars is a bit smaller, it actually the molten core couldn't stay molten and it froze. When that happened, it didn't really freeze, but it stopped being molten. And then when that happened, the Mars lost its magnetic field, and the solar wind stripped away the atmosphere and all the surface water, and that's why it's a dead planet now. So be very, very grateful to the fact we can actually have volcanoes, because that means we still have a molten core. If we didn't have that, life would not exist on Earth. At least nothing like it exists now. Now, yeah, it's really interesting when you learn all this, of course. Now, what reaches the Earth's surface, since the magnetic field keeps all the charged stuff away, is the non-charged photons. Photons don't have a charge. They are actually they're a very fascinating entity. It acts both like a particle and a wave, and actually so does things like photons. I mean, not photons, like a an electron or a proton can also act like a wave. So that's things that you learn when you're in physics. Now, particles without a charge reach the surface because they are not affected by magnetic fields, at least not the type of magnetic fields we have here on Earth. It's not strong enough. If it's super strong, it can actually slow down a wave, a photon, but it still travels. It doesn't deflect. Now, how sunlight hits the Earth and your residence and the nearby landforms all depends on true north, not compass north. That is the key. And this is why I use true north, because I know how bad compass north can be. Now, winds, since the feng of feng shui, that's wind, the wind is affected by the Coriolis force and also the local topography. And that depends again on the Earth's rotation on an axis. And that's what defines true north. So even the wind depends on true north, not compass north. So unfortunately for us, compass north does change every year. True north doesn't change measurably. We really do have some change, and there's a couple interesting websites that I'll talk about, but it changes so slowly, like over 100,000 years. Or there's some that change a little faster, but they're not, we haven't seen the change in all recorded history because it changes so little, so slowly. Now, recently, since about 1995, the movement of the compass north has sped up significantly, and this is forcing regular recalibration of ships' guidance system. Now, they use GPS, of course, to know where they are, but they still have to point their ship in the right direction. And if they don't recalibrate, they don't follow the shipping lanes. They're going to find they're going outside, and then they have to it'll result in a kind of a zigzag path, and that's a waste of energy. So of course they know exactly where they want to go, and so they use a compass in the ship to do that. Now the tilt of the true north does move with respect to the orbital plane. Now the orbital plane is the plane where most of the planets, Pluto doesn't follow this, but it's not really a planet anymore. We all are in one plane when you look at it in 3D. And the ellipticity of Earth, the orbit does change also, but these are both on a very long time scale. And the tilt of true north has a very small range. At least it has a small range in recent times. Now, not recent times, even long ago times, but it is possible that things could change. Now, I think it is Neptune or Uranus. I'm not sure which one. It actually has its axis that it spins around more or less in the orbital plane. And it obviously got hit by something really big to do that, to tilt it. So that could happen, but we won't have to worry about it because if we get hit by something that big, humans aren't likely to survive, at least not many. But this tilt does change direction how sunlight would hit the Earth, but it can only vary about 1.5 degrees from the present condition. And that is going to make a smaller percentage change than that degree, because if you're north or south, it actually won't make any difference. You'll still have a north or south facing house. It only matters at the edges of east and west. And so this will just change the direction. These other things, like the ellipticity changes, this can actually change the intensity of sunlight at a given point during the year. So, but the general amount of energy is usually pretty similar, the overall, when you add it all up. Now, this is a very interesting website if you want to read all about the way the orbits and the Earth changes over time. But these are long, long time scales. There's another one called precession, where the angle as the angle that the tilt of true north, it actually goes around in a circle, but that is like 21,000 years or something like this. And that we haven't seen. Now this, all that will do is change our season, the timing of our seasons. We haven't even seen that. We have so much variability in weather that we can't find that signal. That's at least to the best of my knowledge. We don't see that signal, like spring is getting later in the year, but at some point, spring and summer will interchange because of the precession of the tilt. But none of us that are listening now will ever see that. So here is the map that shows where compass north is. This is true north. This doesn't change. This is the axis on which the Earth rotates. That doesn't change at all. So with historical data, they're able to find that this was like 1600, this is 1700. Even though they're very close to one another, it probably did this to get to 1700. Then it did very strange thing. I'm kind of surprised at that. And then it sped up a little, and this is 1800. Then it did a lot of weird wiggling. This is 1950. And it slowed down a little, sped up a little, but here is 1995, right there, that second dot from the 2000. And it's just zipped, just really moved very fast every single year after that. And this is a projection, of course. And it looks like it's heading to be over Siberia. So this box is what this box is. This edge here, this is this edge here. So this is Canada, very high up in Canada, and this is very high up in Siberia. And we have had the poles flip. North and south have flipped in geological time. Not in our time, of course, but in geological time. The scientists, the geologists, don't quite know why suddenly it's moved so much faster. But it is very, very hard to discern what's going on inside the core. You can only do that by remote readings because we'll never drill down to the core. It's too far, and it's probably would cause a humongous volcano too if you try to do that. So here is what you actually see in terms of the compass readings. Now, I really wish they would put this in a black line, a thicker black line, but there's a green line that's a little hard to see, but it will always be in between where you see the red and the blue. This is the red is you're going to read east of true north, and the blue you're going to read west of true north. That's what it is. So there's another green line that goes here, and this is the North Pole right here, and the magnetic pole. And then we have another one that comes here, and this is the South Pole. Now this is continuous. There's probably a green line here that even I can't see that would go from here to here, and there'll be another one that's somewhere in between here that would go to the North Pole. So it is a continuous, the green line should be continuous. It's a little hard to see though. Now, this is where Malaysia is. And we have a 0 degree going basically right through the middle of Malaysia. So when Joey Yap says you can just use compass north, he's probably not that far off because they are one of the few places on Earth where you have a 0. And there is a pretty good range here. All this is not going to be more than 2% off, and about here to here. So there's a pretty good range here where you actually will not be very far off of true north if you use a compass. But if you're in Brazil, and most of Brazil's population is on this coast, you're going to be over 20% off. The thicker lines are 10%. The thin lines, which might be a little hard to see, they're 2%, each 2 degrees, I'm sorry, 2 degrees. The thicker lines are 10 degrees. So everybody here is somewhere between 20 and 24%. The 24 degrees off. I'm sorry, I keep saying percent. 20 degrees off of true north if they use a compass. Now, I don't know about all how sophisticated a cell phone can be. If it uses GPS, in theory, it could have this data and give you an estimate, but it's not. But not all of them will do that. The free ones, I very much doubt have this data because of what I can see in. But maybe they do. I don't know. But I don't have even access to an iPhone, so I would say that's the most sophisticated one. But I don't know exactly how it does it. Certainly, if you use a Lopan, you'll be really far off if you're in Brazil. So you really need to not use the compass. There's so many places that it isn't valid, where you can easily put yourself into the wrong facing. And I did that because when I first moved into the house we currently live in, Google Maps did not exist. So I couldn't look it up. I just took a compass and said, "Oh, well, hey, this is a nice house. Good for us." It's actually in the very worst direction we could have, but it has a special formation that's activated, so it's okay. Now, this is a detail. It's a little blurry because I had to blow it up, but the dotted lines here are the model, and that is what you saw in the previous slide. This was the model of what was going on. And the solid lines are actual measurements. So you can see here, I think this is probably Tennessee or Kentucky, it really deviates from the predicted. Every place else it's not terribly bad, but it's also not terribly good either. I mean, it's somewhere there. And so where I live, this model is just about right for right now. This is the newest model, I believe. Now, I do think a highly sophisticated smartphone could do this calculation with the aid of GPS, but here's the issue. It cannot compensate for magnetic fields by nearby wires or appliances that come off and on in your residence. When I use my tablet, it also has this ability. The compass will change by 3 degrees depending on whether or not the heating or cooling system is on. And then when it goes off, it goes back to the old number. You know, this is the real problem, is that you just don't know. And if you're trying to put something in your house in a certain direction, you really could screw up because, and especially if you live in an apartment, because all your neighbors have things going off and on. I'd be surprised if your compass is even semi-stable. Now, some people do not believe that ancient people could orient structures to precisely true north, but there are plenty of structures, ancient ruins that prove these people could do this. And it's actually not that hard. It's a lot easier to do than most people think. Stonehenge is believed to be oriented in some way to tell certain timing, although it's so destroyed and kind of they think it's not what it used to be. Well, it certainly isn't what it used to be, but they believe that. But there's tons of structures in the United States, and not the United States, in the Americas that show that there are even cities that are aligned perfectly, really north-south. It's very, very straight and in true north-south, not magnetic, because they didn't have compasses. And also compass feng shui came before the compass comes, so there's another good reason to use true north. Now, a lot of the pyramids are aligned to true north, so or at least one side is. Now, all these structures predate the compass. So does feng shui. So this is this is obvious that, to me at least, since we're talking about how sunlight hits your residence, we're talking about true north. Now, you can find true north even in the ancient times, and this is, I'm sure, what they did. They took observations in a single year, and that's all you need to do to find the alignment. Now, today it's even easier. You can easily find true north at your site, wherever you are, on either the summer or winter solstice at solar noon, your local time. And we have the time and date thing that will tell you exactly, you get to at least your city, it will tell you where true north is, or it'll tell you where solar noon is for your city. I think you might even be able to put in an exact latitude and longitude, but I'm not sure that's true. I haven't tried it. But all you have to do is stick a stick in the ground. And at that time, the shadow will point either true north or true south, depending where you are on the planet. But in the northern hemisphere, if you're north of the Tropic of Cancer, between that and the pole, the shadow will point true north. And if you're below the Tropic of Capricorn, down to the South Pole, it'll point true south. In between, it'll make a little bit of a difference. If you're between the equator and the Tropic of Cancer, the summer, during summer solstice, it'll point true south, but during winter solstice, it'll point true north. And vice versa between the equator and the Tropic of Capricorn. So this is actually, you could do this yourself if you wanted to, if you're really worried about this. Now, the northern hemisphere also has the Dipper stars, and of course, you can use those to orient buildings also. But I think ancient times they just used the stick in the ground and they say, okay, this is true north, and they're really quite accurate. It's amazing how accurate. Now, the compass, however, was a real breakthrough for traveling. It can help orient you throughout the day when you can't, depend on, you don't know when solar noon is wherever you are. So, you could actually do that every day if you really wanted to, but it won't be real except for on the solstices. Now, compass north moves every year, but how the sun hits the earth doesn't change measurably, although I'm sure that scientists know exactly how much it's changing with really super highly precise instruments, and we look at what they call the fixed stars, so out in the universe. So we do know that, yes, we move, but we move so tiny, you don't have to worry about it. Now, if you trust compass north, your feng shui could change from one year to the next without changing your house. That is, your whole charts could change. So that is not accepted in feng shui. Your chart doesn't change. Your flying star chart and your Qi Men chart don't change in time unless you do something to change your house. And so this is another argument why you can't use compass north, especially now that it's moving so fast. Now, satellites and surveys use something called UTM north, and they will call that north, and that's fine. Surveys are extremely accurate down to like 6 digits, but they're not always available. So, um, but of course, we can't build to 6 digits that accurately, so you don't have to worry too much about that. But there is a fairly simple set of equations that allow one to translate from UTM North to True North. And it's set for all over the globe. And they know how to adjust the image from the satellite to UTM North. Now, your satellite, if your satellite determined facing direction is close to within 3 degrees of a dividing line between two different sectors like south and southwest, or between a subsector 1 and 2, because these will give you different flying star charts, then you should use the calculator at my website to do this UTM to True North. And if you want really accurate, you would do that too. This would give you a very precise thing. Now, all you need is the latitude and longitude of your residence. And there is a website out there, I think it's Lat and Lond, a longitude finder. Easy to get to, totally free. Now, and you can use Google Maps for your, or Google Earth for looking at the satellite image of your house. Unless you do something strange, the up in the satellite image is UTM North. And if you messed it around, there'll be a little compass that'll come up. You just click on it and it'll orient it properly to UTM North for your particular location. Now, if you plan to use some really highly detailed feng shui, you do have to go down to make sure that here we're talking about, you really have to know exactly where you are. This has to do with the 64 hexagrams. So, and this has its uses. So in general, you can just use it. Then you really know what your facing direction is very definitively. And my website, it's free. It doesn't charge, I don't charge anything. Now, inside your house, when you're placing a mitigation or like the wealth pot that I talk about, you have to put it in a certain direction, in a certain location. Or if you're talking about activating a sector or subsector, you can't really trust the compass of your house, inside your house, because of all the things that are going on. Apartments are worse. I mean, because everybody turns things off and on. Now, I know that my house faces Southwest 1 from the satellite, and this is UTM to True North corrected. Now, the physical compass, an old style physical compass, reads about 200, and this is exactly where it should be. It was between 8 and 10 where I live from that current map. And I mean, they don't get any more refined than that. So it's between 8 and 10, and that's exactly what the compass is showing. When I moved in 1995, the compass reading was like almost like 185, something like this. So I had it really far off, Of course, between 85 and this, I think it's the same flying star charts. But this 200 is in South 3, but I know it's in Southwest 1 because I can see it from the satellite. So this would cause me to have a completely wrong chart. Reality shows that we are a Southwest 1. The predictions that come from feng shui it is much closer to Southwest 1 than what was predicted with South 3. Very different, in fact. They're different enough, and I'm quite sure we're Southwest 1. And again, in 1995, it read closer to 185 degrees. I don't remember exactly what it read, but I would say, oh, great, we have a nice south-facing house. But as I live there, I go, I don't really think this is south-facing because at noon, the sun is in the wrong place. And that's because we're southwest. Now, my tablet's readings are highly erratic. This may be because I don't really know what I'm doing with it because I never use it. But the best reading I got was 212. And so it's on the other side of the thing. So I don't know if it's trying to compensate. Maybe it's an old compensation, which, or who knows? I have no idea why it reads what it does. But I can only use my tablet inside the house because I need Wi-Fi. And when I go outside the house, I lose that signal. So, so that could be all the stuff inside the house that's causing the problem. Now, moving around the house, even with the compass, does do a little bit of change. It's really hard to, I have a compass that's tiny. So it's very hard to read the exact degree. But of course, the tablet, you move it a little bit, it changes. But again, it depends perhaps how close you are to an appliance for this to work. And of course, when certain big appliances like the heating cooling system comes on, it changes to a new steady state. So that it's a, you know, you just can't trust it inside your house. But so I do have to ask the question, do you really believe your feng shui changes if your AC is on or off? I don't think anybody believes that. And this is why I use True North. Now, you can determine your facing direction using, without computer software. I have a video on that same location where the calculator is that shows you how to do this with just a piece of paper. So you can do that. I use a computer because I have that capability. Uh, and if you're going to use that, I would recommend you have a 360 protractor rather than a 180 because it's just easier to read. Now, this procedure can be done with CAD, that's computer-aided drafting software, and it's a lot more precise, a lot easier to use, a lot quicker, I should say. Maybe not easier, but quicker. But of course, CAD software does have a learning curve. But there's a few, well, SketchUp is the only free, simple version I've ever used, and it would be adequate, and it's pretty easy to pick up. And there is a free version. You have to look for the free version, but they do have one. And there's some newer free software, which I haven't used, which may even do a better job. I don't know. But you can do this. And you just import the image. You take a screenshot, you import that image into the software, and then you draw over it. That's how you do it. Because straight up is UTM North. So let's just show you a couple things. So this is not my house floor plan. I don't even think it's quite even the right dimensions, but it's just a general rectangular house. It can have a little bump out, and ours does. Now we actually have a garage down here, but you don't count the garage because it's open to the outside all the time for ventilation for the heating and cooling system. It has screens so animals don't get in, but that's it. But it's certainly connected to the outside. And but so that's why it is not included. We also have a porch back here that's not included because it's open. There's no walls. And of course this isn't the layout at all. But let's just assume this is the layout. This is like the master bedroom. We've got two smaller bedrooms. The kitchen is here, and then this is just general living area. I'm going to say the laundry's here, and there you have a little powder room here with a slider door probably. And this is the general layout. And I know that after I've done the UTM to True North correction, this is my house facing. And then I know this has to be True North. And this angle here is 208.6 degrees. And if you have a protractor, you can do that. And this, of course, this line here is 90 degrees to this front thing. And this is too small of a bump out to create any difference. This oval here in the middle is 1/3 this total distance on this edge from this wall to this wall, and the width is 1/3 from the inside, or well, actually from the outside of this wall to this wall. So that's how I get what is considered center of the house. And you just place the 24 mountain ring on it. Now I have one that is a lot more detailed. I've simplified it so that there's not a lot of stuff going on here. But we're still in the dragon year, and we know the west needs metal because we have the 5 yellow here. And that's an annual affliction. Of course, it will move next year. And it's very clear that only this bedroom here, very, very certainly, with the bed is there. This is too small of an area to like flip the headboard to put it here. It's just too narrow to have the bed and be able to open up the door. So this is definitely a west bedroom. So it at the beginning of the year, it should have had 60 kilograms of metal put there. And if this was my house, I would have done it, of course. Now, although this bedroom does need metal, you can still sleep there. You can do the normal level of activity. You can study. Study is usually quiet. Well, okay, don't play really loud music while you're studying. But using this, like doing new exercise in this room is not good. Rearranging the furniture is not good. So that is how you do it. And so this bedroom has an issue this year, but doesn't mean you should not sleep there. It's okay to sleep there if you've been sleeping there. It's fine. Now, this second bedroom here, in this orientation, the bed in this orientation determines that this is also a west bedroom, because for a bedroom, it is where the center of the headboard is located. That determines the sector of the bedroom. And so you can see this bedroom has some possibilities to change it. But as this sits here, this is definitely a west bedroom, even though the vast majority of it is in the northwest. However, if we flip the bed, turn it on its side, so that the foot is toward the southeast, you mark the center of the bed. Now, you're never going to have it really super shoved up against the wall because you got to be able to make the bed. But even if it's very close to the wall, the headboard, the center of the headboard is now in northwest, and you don't need to have any mitigation there, because now this is a northwest bedroom. That is one of the tricks that you use to manipulate, especially in bedrooms. If you have it dividing, if you have it divided into two, which many bedrooms are, you can determine which sector you want it to be in. Now, the kitchen, that's another tricky one. It depends on where the center of the front of the range is located, which sector this will be. It's either going to be west or southwest. And if the center of the front of the range is anywhere in the red, you are going to have a west kitchen, and you would need some extra metal there. And if the range is anywhere here, even over here, you then have a southwest kitchen. And this year you do have the 3 killings in Southwest 1, but this kitchen is only in Southwest 2 and 3 possible. So you're okay. The kitchen doesn't need anything special. Now, you're not going to move your range around, I'm pretty sure, unless you were rearranging the whole kitchen anyway. And you're not going to do that on a regular basis. But this will just tell you, there will be a year when Southwest has the 5 yellow, and so then you'll have to do the same thing. It just changes every year. Now, this is the nice thing about having doing this in the computer. I can draw a line here. This is 2 feet 1 inch, which is where your countertop usually ends, and that is also usually where your range ends too. And so I know exactly where this line is. I can be very, very detailed. If you have a two-scale plan and you know how to use a scale ruler or how to calculate this, you can do this on a either a dimension floor plan or at least a two-scale floor plan. So you can determine where, if your range is along this wall, which is this room. Now, of course, we could do the same thing over here along this wall, and we can do the same. Well, this wall, it will all be southwest if it's on this wall, but it depends on, I don't know where the range is because this isn't a real place. Now, there's other thing that you should note. The main door is in South 3. Even though it faces southwest, it doesn't matter. Where this door location is important for the Cheeman chart and the purple-white chart. So you do need to determine that too. And you do this with respect to true north, of course. Now, having a two-scale plan does make feng shui tremendously more easy because you just lay charts over it and you know where things are. Now, if it is a standard scale, there are reasonably priced scale rulers that they believe that's what they call them. You can do really quick measurements with this. Of course, you have to know how to use a scale ruler and you have to use the right scale, but there's plenty of videos out there that you can watch to know how to do that. Now, having plans in your computer is even easier because you can measure things really easy, or at least depending on the software you can. And it just is a lot easier to be able to place mitigations if you know this. And you can trust what you've done. Now, although you cannot trust the absolute readings on your phone or your compass or your Lopan, you can trust the relative readings as long as something doesn't come on inside your house. But you can go back and forth, and if you can get consistent readings, you are okay. Now, you will be able to use the compass on your phone by correcting for the error between the real direction from true north and what your phone actually reads. There may be places where you can, there are places on Earth where it's 00, but, they're not very common. Now, this means that the relative difference in angle is valid, but not the absolute number. So you can still know what you need to do, and you can still place things in the right place. Now, it's important if you're trying to determine the direction of a pond or a mountain from the center of your residence, if you can't see the thing from standing when you're in the center of the residence. But even then, even if you can, you still need to make this correction. Now, the location of the mountain may not allow you to determine its direction from the center of your residence unless you are lucky enough to see it through an open window, a window or an open door. Now, you do know that your compass isn't going to be that accurate, especially inside your residence. So you measure things, but you know what they should be. And this is where the relative readings come in for this purpose. So let's say this is the house again. Now, we know if this is the true facing direction, and we know that these walls are basically 90 degrees, we know this wall facing has to be 118.6, this has to be 28.6, and this has to be 298.6. We know that has to be the case. The 0.6, it might be a little bit off, but at least 118 for this wall. We definitely know this. And so you can determine all these directions. And we know that this is 45 degrees from this, so we could actually calculate that too in terms of the facing direction of the main door if we want to. Now, let's say you're lucky enough you could actually see a mountain someplace in the distance through this window. There you would stand in the center of your residence, and you can do it with the plan, and you can measure these distances if you wanted to, like from this wall and this wall, or even this wall and this wall, if you have a good two-scale plan. Now, We know that this is what this wall should be. Let's say we're standing there, we point the cell phone or the compass, doesn't matter. Well, let's do a cell phone towards this wall. Let's say it reads 100 degrees. So we know what it should be and we know what it reads. So we know this reading is 18.6 degrees too low. We just know it's off. That's fine. We don't care, but we do care what that number is. So then you just rotate, and it's best to rotate the phone. The phone has to be in the center of the house. And if you just rotate the phone and you can just, aim it up with a mountain, then let's say it reads 141 degrees. And so we know we have to add this 18.6, so it's basically 160 degrees. That's where this mountain is located. And so we can tell exactly what sector it's in. And so 141 is southeast 3, but 160 basically is south 1. So we know this mountain is actually in south 1. So this is, and this is actually good for period 9, so this isn't bad. But this is how you would do it. You have to correct for the error, but you have to know what it should be, and that is what you get from the satellite. Now, if you cannot see the peak from a window or an open door, you can determine its direction with at least 2 readings. 3 is a little better, a little more confident you've got it right, outside your residence, where you can see the mountain. Now, you may need a larger than normal sheet of paper, and perhaps even the help from a high school student who's good in math, unless you yourself are, to determine this. But it is doable, and it can be done. Now, I would do this in a computer because I have the software to do it, and it's very easy for me to do. And sometimes I would have you guys do this if you have a single peak and I can't determine it from either a topographic map or Google Maps. And sometimes it's just not visible. And if you zoom out enough to see the mountain, you can no longer see the house. That is often the problem. So here is something you can do if you cannot see a mountain or a water feature from the center of your residence. What you do is you stand outside, and you could do this for an apartment too, a little more complicated, but we can have you do this along the whole apartment building. And of course, we need the floor plan of your floor and all that kind of stuff for the apartment to be able to do this. But what you would do is, let's say it's just a house, make it easy. You would stand here with your spine right in line with the corner, but you're going to be facing perpendicular to this wall. So you know that you are in true direction, you're facing 118.6 degrees. And so you don't have to lean up against the wall. You can if it is doable, but you have to be close to that wall. And let's say you take a reading, this reading, the perpendicular reading, and it actually reads 125. So this means that the reading is 6.4 degrees too high, because we know what this actually is with respect to true north. And then you try to rotate the phone without moving it too much in any direction, and aim it at the peak or at the center of the pond if that's what you're doing. And let's say it reads 84 degrees. Well, we know this is the actual reading, and this is the important reading. This is the direction of the peak of the mountain from this corner. Then you're going to repeat this measurement at least at position 3, because that's the farthest away and the easiest one to do in terms of being able to find it. I prefer you to do all 3 because this gives you one more extra check and it's a little better. But you're going to repeat it again. Let's say you stand at number 2. Again, you're pointing perpendicular to this wall, and this is basically as close to the middle as you can determine. And this or at least you have to know exactly what distance that is that you're standing from, in case there's something blocking here and you can't be there. And again, you're going to look perpendicular. It might not read 125. That's what it read here. It could be different here. It could be different here. So this is why you have to do the readings. And you do want to go back and measure the perpendicular of the wall. And that's just to check that nothing has changed. If an appliance comes on in your house while you're moving it to point at the mountain, if you go back to perpendicular to that wall, if it doesn't read the same thing, something is probably come on inside your house. Now, if it's off by point something, like 0.1, that's not a big deal. That it can be very sensitive. So I wouldn't be too worried about it, but you don't want it off by anything more than half a degree, because then something has happened inside your house and that has changed. Now, like in my house, when the AC comes on, it changes 3 degrees, and you probably do feel some of that outside, even though you're not inside the house, you're right next to it. So that is why you have to repeat those 3 steps in each one of these locations. And you're going to use the number that comes out here. You're going to, if the mountain, unless the mountain is super far away, this reading to the center, to that peak, should be different. It shouldn't be this. And this one also should not be this. And it will depend on the exact position of the mountain and how far away you are, how much these differ. Now, if all 3 readings are within 1, maybe 2 degrees, that's kind of pushing it. You can just average that and use that as the mountain direction. It usually means it's quite far away when these readings are all very close. And we're talking about this reading here, that you've made the correction pointing at the mountain. And if they differ by more than 2 degrees, sometimes the hill is close enough to measure from the satellite. But at any rate, geometry can solve this quite easily, and you don't have to worry about keeping track of, when you zoom out to see the mountain, keeping track of where the center of your house is, which can be a little hard. So these 2 measurements, 1 and 3, are like necessary, and it gives you the widest range of being able to do this. Position 2 is a check. If you're going to do this, I would recommend you do all 3 measurements. And then there's another step, and I'm going to show you in the next slide how you would actually do this. I do it in the computer, so it's really easy, but you can even do it on paper. So these 2 green lines, let's say we have 2 different readings, and so they will meet at a certain point. And you can do this on a piece of paper. You can see it probably be pretty big. But then the center of your house will also have this. And now you know exactly where that peak is with respect to the center of your house. That's how you determine its angle. And these angles can be kind of different. This is relatively close. You probably could see this from an actual satellite, but maybe for some reason you can't. So you can also use this, you aim it at the center of a pond. You can do the same thing. And this might be a little more accurate. Of course, if it's a pond on your property, it's usually fairly doable, but you could take it from the door and from another corner, and you could do it from the center of the house if you can't see it. This is a geometric trick. And of course, I do this in the computer, and it takes me a very short time. Now, when I do this for you, I take a look at the satellite maps and the topographic maps and often local photos to determine your local landscape. Now, the photos are especially useful in determining what shape of mountains you may have, because they, and also I can also help with their direction. I mean, sometimes I need to identify, if you've got a few individual mountains, where they are and what they look like, because they there are times when certain ones will activate certain stars more because they're in sync with each other. But if it's a mountain range or a hill, range of hills, then it basically, we're not too worried because we know that everything is being activated in that one sector. If it's 45 degrees, that we know that sector is active. Now, mountains, which of course includes hills and higher ground, mountains in Chinese does that. They activate the sitting star in your flying star chart. Now, higher ground, you probably need a topo map because lots of times you may think your yard is flat. I guarantee you it is not. Unless, and the only time you won't have higher ground is if you're on the mountaintop, really truly on the mountaintop or hilltop. Now, water activates the facing star in your flying star chart, and that's why this is important to know where these things are located. And one would hope that the stars that are being activated are timely. It's possible they're not timely, but this is one reason why practitioners of feng shui go out of their way to find houses that have these things being timely. That is, they have special formations. And that really makes a difference in terms of how smooth your life goes. So that's it. I'm hoping you can really understand why True North is important and how you can use that and truly determine very precisely what your feng shui is. So thanks again for watching.